Everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our session. So you can join our Slack channel with the QR code, and let's get started. So this is the offensive Doug Slack workspace. So you can join this work Slack channel for networking, events, job boards, Tableau supports, and you can also connect with us, and we'll try to help you out with as much as possible. So let's get started. So currently we have two co-leaders. I'm co-leading this tug with Jerry. I am a CRM analyst at Old Dominion University based in Norfolk, Virginia, and Jerry will introduce himself.
Hi guys, I'm currently working in New York Life insurance company, specifically in risk management department. So I use Tableau in day-to-day life. Yeah, thanks.
So these are some of the Tableau updates before we get onto the main presentation. Tableau Next is built on Salesforce platform. This is a virtual hackathon based on Tableau Next that's happening from July 24th to September 18, 2025. Uh, and this is some of the throwbacks from the Tableau conference that happened earlier this year. You can catch the sessions on Salesforce Plus. You can also go through the Iron Viz and many more. So Tableau Next. Tableau Next is built on Salesforce platform and is deeply integrated with Agentforce, providing enterprise level performance, security, and scalability, while also integrating AI insights and actionability. So if you scan this one, you would be able to read the blueprint for agentic analytics. And without further ado, let's welcome our speaker for today, Lisa Hitch. And I'll let you share your screen.
Yeah, that sounds
Just
good.
a
Well, thank you first of all for having me. Let me share my screen and then I'll introduce myself. Um, there you go. Sorry for the infinity mirror. Okay, there you go. Okay. Well, welcome for this session. There you go. Sorry. Okay. I can't see the chat, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself or type it in the chat, and then Jerry or Rashik, they will interrupt me. But welcome to this session. I want to talk about building purpose-driven dashboards, so not just dashboards that meet the minimum requirements, but design lessons that I have implemented when I was working in the financial industry to build dashboards that really get adopted and used. So maybe just as a little bit of background, I'm Lisa. I am a data consultant at the Information Lab. I also do a lot of other things. I am an adjunct lecturer for biostatistics at the City University of New York. I also pursue there my doctoral degree in public health, where I look at the adoption of generative AI like ChatGPT. And I am also leading a tug, and that is the Data Plus Women NYC tug. And then just as a fun fact, I recently learned flying trapeze. So here at the bottom right, you see me just doing weird stunts on a trapeze that's kind of going back and forth. It's a lot of fun. If any one of you ever want to try it out, if you're in New York City, it's on top of a pier. So it's really, really cool. Like you overlook the financial district. It's a ton of fun. But what you're really here for is not to hear about me talking about trapeze, but what you're really here for is to hear more about dashboards. So let me tell you a little bit about the background story about the particular dashboard I want to talk about today. So as I said, I work as a consultant. My last 3 clients, they have all been in the financial industry. And about a year ago, I was working with a major North American bank. And as part of that, I was tasked to build a dashboard and to help on a project that looks at different language preferences for their customers. So within that bank, obviously you have your customers, they have different products like a credit card or a savings account. And a lot of the customers, their main preference may be English, but there may also be a preference like Spanish or Chinese or some other type of language. And so the idea was that we want to dive deeper into those language preferences and how they look across the business. So what I started out with was really what I call the what requirements. So those are the requirements that stay on the surface. They're very descriptive requirements. And so this could be something like, and this is indeed what I got back then from my stakeholders, something like, I want to see KPIs like number of customers per language. I want to see trends over time. I want to see breakdown by product and subproduct and region. And I basically received that in an Excel sheet, not much more than this. And that was basically it. And so I was thinking, okay, if I were to follow this as an analyst, and if I just build something off of that, I would probably build something like this. This actually meets all of the requirements. It shows a breakdown by languages. It shows a breakdown by countries. The time trend might not be in here, but you could add that to a second page or something like that. But then the question is, there are so many colors here. I don't know what's going on. The title is customer language preferences, but I have no idea how the rest is related to that. And so the question is, if I build something like this, yes, I meet my what requirements, but will this actually be adopted by my end users? And the answer is probably not. So let's do a little detour, and that is to talk about adoption theory. And that was also what drove me to doing this talk today, because when we are building dashboards, as I said at the beginning, we want to build purpose-driven dashboards. And purpose-driven dashboards are dashboards that are going to be adopted. So there's a theory called diffusion of innovation theory, and that theory was actually developed in the 1960s, so far before we even had dashboards and technology and AI and all of that, but it is surprisingly still very accurate. And what that theory describes is basically an explanation of how, why, and at what rate new ideas or technologies spread through cultures or social systems. Now, what that means is, in our case, new ideas and technologies are dashboards, Tableau dashboards, for example, or it could be generative AI. In cultures and social systems, if you're working in an organization or in a firm, that is basically the business, right? Or your team or your department. That theory also describes how that innovation, let's say that dashboard, is diffused or adopted across those systems. And what it says is that there are people who are called early adopters or innovators. They usually make up a very small portion, about 15% of the people. And those are the people who are really excited about the new technologies, who are immediately jumping onto an opportunity like that. They want to download the newest software or the newest app, or even a beta version or something like that. But there's a lot of people that may fall into that early majority. So yes, they want to try the new things, but they're maybe a little bit hesitant. So they're just trying to wait and see if all the bugs are fixed and the errors. Maybe you don't download the newest update of Tableau Desktop right away. Maybe you wait another month and then you download it. That would be early majority. And then late majority, those are all the people who wait even longer. They're like, okay, let's give it another half year. If I see that most people are using it, maybe my family and my friends, maybe then I'm using it. Or if we're talking about a business context, late majority is usually the people who are like, okay, they're very skeptical. Should we even implement Tableau? What's the advantage over using Excel reports? And only if half of the department is using dashboards, then they're switching to Tableau dashboards. And then there's also about 16% of people who are so-called laggards. And those are the people who wait until the very end, like until they have no other choice to adopt this new technology, or let's say a dashboard. Now, why I mention this is because often as data analysts or data consultants, we get a task or these requirements, we get them by people who are bought into Tableau. They may be investing in it, they may be decision makers, they're really excited about it, they see the potential, the impact it can have. So basically, they are early adopters. But then when we develop that dashboard, we have to keep in mind who our audience or our end user is. So our end users, they can really be across that whole spectrum. They might be really excited about dashboards. They might be those early adopters, but they might also be in the late majority or even those laggards. So we have to build dashboards that can also reach those people. Now, how do we do that? Well, luckily, that theory gives us 5 big buckets, what we can look at. That is, first off, relative advantage. So we want to build dashboards that show a relative advantage over other tools. When we're talking about Tableau, we may want to implement interactivity or filters or something that shows that our dashboards has an advantage over existing Excel reports. Then compatibility is whatever we have developed, is that compatible with my values, with the culture at the company or at the firm? Complexity is about, is my dashboard complex? Is it hard to understand? Is it easy to navigate? Because the truth is that the more we build dashboards for senior leadership, the less time they have to try and figure out a new innovation or a new dashboard. So we want to build dashboards that are intuitive, they're easy to navigate. You don't need a manual or a handbook to understand what you have to click. And then there's also trialability. So can I trial out? Can I have a free trial of whatever this new innovation is? In Tableau, this could be having a viewer license, or maybe even looking at my neighbors or colleagues' dashboard and seeing how they interact with it. And then lastly, there's also observability. So can I, with my own experience, with my own eyes, can I observe that there is an advantage or an impact or something that's benefiting me? So can I see, okay, I'm saving time by not having to apply filters in Excel, but I can just do it on a dashboard. I may not have to download and PDF reports to my users, but I just have this self-serve dashboard. Can I observe that? And here I bolded the 2 that I think are the most important when I build dashboards. So it's always thinking about what current tools do people use, and then how can I build a dashboard that takes that one extra step that makes it a little bit better of what they're currently using, and then keeping that complexity in mind. I want to build dashboards that are easy to understand, where the instructions are right there, or at least you can access the instructions easily. You want something that's intuitive and not overly complex. So that was a little detour, but let's come back to those requirements. So I just talked about that I had those what requirements, and they were not really helpful because they don't help me understand my end users and help me implement those things I was just talking about, right? So I had discussions with stakeholders and end users, and I was really asking about what I call the purpose requirements. Those are the requirements where we want to dig deeper into why we built something. What decision are we going to make based off of that dashboard? What action are we going to take? And so I was talking to a few people who would be using that dashboard, and I found out that the purpose was to increase or decrease resource allocation for translation services. So if they were seeing that more and more people requesting their preferred language to be Chinese, then they may want to hire more Chinese translators. And another purpose was also that they had all of that data in Excel sheets and they didn't want to sift through it, and it was really cumbersome. So they wanted an easy tool, something easy to use. And then lastly, I found out that this dashboard is also going to be widely used and widely distributed. And there will be more than 100 users of varying data literacy skills, varying levels of that spectrum I was just talking about. And so I had to build something that would hopefully address most of these people on the spectrum, which is always harder than if you have just one person in mind. Before I show you what I built, I do want to briefly mention about the data. So it sounded pretty straightforward. The stakeholder said, okay, all the data is in one centralized place. I can just pull the language preferences from there and it should be easy. Hint, if you are a data analyst or a data consultant, if someone says it should be easy, it really is easy. So the reality looked really like I had multiple different teams who used multiple different data fields and data sets. I didn't know which one was the golden truth or the one that was the most accurate. I had to figure that out through lots of conversation and back and forth and emails and all of that. And then finally, I was pointed to a golden truth data source. And I was like, yes, now I can start building. Well, it turned out that that golden truth data source actually just had English and Spanish included. For some reason, they didn't record the other languages. Don't ask me why. I hope they have it fixed now a year later. But a year ago, they had just those two languages recorded. The stakeholder didn't know that. He was like really surprised at that. But in the end, I did build the dashboard actually with just English and Spanish. And I focused mostly on Spanish in that case. But the dashboard I'm going to show you, I included some mock data, obviously, and I included a couple more languages. But yeah, that was a bit the background story, how this dashboard came about, and I'm going to show you how this looks like. If you want to access it, it's on my Tableau public. So if you scan this QR code, you should be able to find it. And you can also download the workbook because I'm going to show you how I implemented dynamic zone visibility. So if you want to follow along and see what I'm doing, then feel free to download it now. And I know that Jerry and Oshik, they're also going to put the link in the chat. Okay, let me switch over to my Tableau. I hope you can all see that. If not, shout. This is the mocked up version of the dashboard. So again, it's about customer language preferences. I have all my filters on the side, and then the main task was really to look at language preferences in two parts. The first one is spoken language. So if a customer requests that if they interact with a bank representative, what type of language do they prefer then? Do they prefer English, Spanish, Chinese, any other language? And then the right side is about written language. So if they receive a letter from the bank, do they want that letter to be English, Spanish, and so on? At the top, you see a couple KPIs, and you see how that changed from year over year. So in the previous year, the current year, you see the number of customers who articulated a preference. And then there's also customers who just said, I don't have a preference. Like the default is usually English, so they don't really have a preference here. But out of the customers who specifically said, I want this language, they were like most people said they wanted English. A couple said Spanish, Chinese, and a few other languages. I decided on the dashboard to make use of the color to only highlight the three most common languages. Because as you can see in the donut chart, it gets really, really small. Like there is some Vietnamese, there is some Indian here, but it gets really small. So the KPIs here, they are representative of the languages that were most commonly requested. If you hover over it, you have a little viz and tooltip where you can see how that changed over time. So in this case, Chinese decreased from 2023 to 2024. Again, same thing happening over here with the written languages. So again, the documents that they requested. And then at the bottom, there was another breakdown that I wanted to look at, which was PIN pad. So if you go to an ATM, what language do you select there? What language do you prefer? And then personal communication is basically everything else. So all the spoken communication, all the documents, and so on. Now, the heart of this dashboard is really the right side, where we have a product analysis and we also have a geographical analysis. Because we didn't have so much space on the dashboard, I chose to basically make two sections and use DZV, or dynamic zone visibility, to have the user switch between those two sections. So here I have the product analysis. You can see for those written language preferences, what types of products the customer was engaged in, checkings and savings accounts or mortgage or so whatsoever. And then at the bottom, you have the subproducts. So if I click on mortgage, then it filters to those subproducts for only those. If I click on investment, it shows me the subproducts for those products. Now, I mentioned that the stakeholders, they also wanted to see geographical analysis. So you have a button here where you can click on it, and then that right side, that switches to the geographical analysis. So we have written language preferences by countries, and then we also have it broken down for just the US. Now, just a fun fact, when I was working with the data, there were some really wonky countries in there. I could not explain what countries those were. I really questioned my geographical skills at that point, but they had some weird countries in there. So to be reflective of that, I included in my mock data Wakanda. So here in Wakanda, we have our customer language preferences for our Marvel Bank. And then at the bottom, you have a breakdown by US states. And that's really it. You can filter on the right side again for different types. Like if you just want to look at wealth management from that bank, you can click on that and it filters to that, and different age groups and account status. So if you just want to look at active accounts or only at closed accounts, you can do that as well. You can also close the settings if you want to print it, which I hope they don't, because I hope that they use this as a self-service dashboard, but you can do that as well. Now, I want to show you how I did the dynamic zone visibility. Dynamic zone visibility has been around for a couple years, but as it is with a lot of new features, and depending where on that adoption spectrum you are, whether you are one of the early adopters or more the late adopters, you may not have used it or may not have time to dive into how to use it. So I want to show you how I did that and how it looks so seamless. Oops, sorry. Okay, there you go. All right. So let's say I built a dashboard. This is the exact same dashboard I just had. On the right side, I have my geographical analysis. Now, I built another dashboard that looks exactly the same, except that on the right side, now I have my product analysis. I can't put all the information on one dashboard because it's too much information. So I want to use a button to like switch between them. So again, just the right side is changing here. Now you may be familiar with a show height button. So let's say, let me actually switch over here. So let's say, okay, I have my container here. I'm going to build a new container called product analysis. So I'm just going to do a text box in here. I'm going to call this product analysis. Maybe make this a little bigger. And then I want to make this a different background color, maybe. Let me just quickly choose this one to match it. Okay, let me take my padding away. That's always by default. And then I want to add my my bar chart. So I have my product bar chart and my sub-product bar chart. I add those here. Maybe I want to add a border. What border did I take? Maybe this one. And then I want to add some outer padding to kind of push everything in the inside. There you go. Let's see if I have 15 here too. Okay. So now I have my two boxes. Product analysis, geographical analysis. Now, if you're familiar with show and hide buttons, you can select the container and you can click this add show hide button. You can put this wherever you want. By default, it's floating. Let me put this here. I know it looks ugly, but like I could click this and then it disappears, right? And if I wanted to, I could do this here as well. I would probably want different icons for these buttons because then my users don't know which opens which. And, you know, I can kind of switch between. Okay, then I show both and I close the other one. But the problem with that is the user at some point will open both or none. So if you have both closed, it'll look like this. And if you have both opened, it will look like this. So it's not really a good option and it's not really intuitive because then the user will just get confused. So let's not do that. What I do instead is I'm going to create a container and I'm going to do a horizontal container and I'm going to put both of my containers that contain my content, I put that in the horizontal container. To make this a little clearer, actually, let me put a text box here first. I'm call this DZV1, and then I'm going to do another text box in here. Okay, this is a little small. Let me make this a little bigger. There you go. And call this DZV2. So I want my first container here, and I want my second container here, right? So I'm going to select this, drag this in here, delete DZV1. I'm going to grab this, put this in here, delete DZV2. Doesn't look too nice right now, but that's fine. We can fix that. There you go. Okay. So far, nothing really happened except I just put these two in their own container. Now, what DZV or dynamic zone visibility does is it's going to turn one container. So it's going to turn this container on and it will turn this container off. And when I click the next button, it will do the opposite. So it's always going to turn one off and the other one on. One on, the other on, one off. And how I do that is I want to have a button up here. Now, I actually need two buttons up there because if I click on product analysis, I want a button that says, take me to the geographical analysis. And if I'm on the geographical analysis, I want a button that says, take me to the product analysis. So I created two worksheets here, and I just basically put a string, an empty string on text. I called this product, and I wrote here in the text box, click for product analysis. I did the same thing for geographical analysis. The filters don't really need to be applied, but they were just applied automatically. It's fine. But basically, the important part is that I have two buttons, and whatever you put on text, that is important. So whatever this one says, like geo and product, we will need this in a parameter. So I'm going to create a parameter, and I'm going to call this DZV parameter. Maybe DZV geography versus products. I'm going to make this a string, make it a list, and here I list those two names that I have on text. So I have product and I have geo or geography. You can call it whatever you want. I forgot a P here. Okay. So I have this parameter, and my buttons, they already contain this string that should flow into my parameter. So if I go back to my dashboard, and I'm going to show my buttons up here, just going to drag them in here and hide the title. maybe fit the entire view so it looks a little nicer. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I'll leave it for now. I can make this prettier. I can make like a background here. I think that would help. There you go. And for this one, the same. And I really need to remove my padding. Sorry, I'm very particular with my dashboards. I always want it to look perfect. There you go. Okay, I have 2 buttons, right? Now, I am going to dashboard and I'm going to apply an action. So basically what I want to do, don't worry about this. These are my previous actions. I'm going to apply a parameter action. So what I want to do is I click on geographical analysis on this button, right? This is this worksheet I created here. And I want my parameter now to take that keyword, which is geo. So I'm going to say DZV update geographical button. And I'm going to say, let's deselect everything. I'm going to say on my button, on my geographical button, like this button up here on the left side, on select when I click on it, into my DZV parameter that I just created. Now I want the keyword to say geo. And then I'm going to do the same thing for my other button. So I'm going to create a parameter action. I'm going to say maybe actually DZV product button. And I'm just going to select my product button. So this is the button in the top right. On select, so when I click, change my DZV geography versus products parameter. And the field, that's the only field I have on the worksheet, is the product field. I'm going to show you what that does. It actually doesn't change our dashboard yet. Okay. I don't need this. Okay, so let me drag this maybe up here so you can see it. Okay. So I have my DZV parameter and it says either product or geography, right? Or geo. So if I click on this, you see that this parameter changes. It took on that new field geo. If I click on this, it uses product. So that is working. Now, obviously, nothing changes on my dashboard itself, because for that, I need to create a Boolean or a true and false field. And that true and false field will only say if DZV product parameter, or if DZV parameter is equal to product, then true, else false. So if I just go back here, I actually created these already, so I can just pull them up for you. Let me make this a little bigger. Sorry, this is my trackpad on my Mac. So I have a Boolean or true false calculated field that says if this DZV parameter, like if that's geo, then it's true. So DZV parameter equals geo. And then I create another calculated field, another true and false, that says that product or DZV parameter needs to be equal to product. So I have these true and false fields, and they are mutually exclusive, right? If my parameter up here is on product, one is true and one is false. If it's on geo, the other one is true and the other one is false. So that means that what I said before about we want to turn one container on and the other off, and then we want to switch that. Now we have that structure set up. We have a field that's going to be true and the other one is going to be false. So now the only thing we need to do is we need to apply that to our container. So I'm going to click on this container. I'm going to go to dashboard. I'm going to go to layout and scroll all the way to the top. There you go. And you will see here at the very bottom, control visibility using value. And that is our dynamic zone visibility, or DZV. So I click on here, And it will only show you true and false or Boolean calculated fields. So in this case, I'm going to choose my calculated field that's equal to product. So parameter is equal to product. And you see it already disappeared because my parameter is on geo. Now, I also need to turn this container, and I need to set this to geo. Nothing will change because it is set to geography right now. If I change this parameter to product, nothing happens. Great. Let me go back. Let's see. Okay, let's set this first to geo. And then let's set this to product. Okay, fantastic. Why is that not working? Let's see. Okay, so let's see. Our buttons, they change that. Our calculate, oh, because I need to choose the other. Let's see, if I select this to product, yeah, I need to use the other one. So if I use this as geo and this as product, then it should work. There you go. Okay. So now if I click on geography, it still doesn't work. Fantastic. I love this. Okay, let's troubleshoot this together. So I created my last selection that is taking geography, and it parses it into my, okay. So if I click on this, it takes geography. If I take this, it takes product. Let me go back and show my two containers again. Okay, so this container, we only want to show if product is true. And this container, we only want to show if geography is true. Okay. Okay, let me go back to my demo dashboard and see what I did here. So on my geography button, I take geography, and then this container here, where this is included, this takes the DZV geography. I actually think what might be happening is that because I'm using multiple dashboards that are using the same calculated fields, it might not be working. So let me create new calculated fields. Let's see if that solves it. DZV Geo2. Okay. I actually know what's wrong. I had created those calculated fields with a different parameter name before, and now I am using this new parameter name. But let's do it together. This is real time how I would do Tableau and troubleshooting in Tableau. So this is good to see. So okay, I have my parameter. This is equal to geo. Now I create a calculated field, DZV product. I'm going to do my DZV parameter is equal to product. Oh, 2. And now let's try this again. So if you ever get lost and don't find your container with dynamic zone visibility, you have the hierarchy here on the left side. And so this is the container you're seeing, and this is the container you don't see, and you can just turn it off. And so now I have both of them again. So I am on product. I want this to be my product 2, and I want this to be my geo 2. Now this disappeared, and now let's see if it works. Now it does work. So you're saying you do have to keep track of the exact parameter name that you're using and the exact calculated fields you're using. And now if I click on my two buttons, because they changed that parameter, and that parameter is linked to that Boolean field we're using here, my buttons, they can change what is on my dashboard. Now I can delete this, and now I have my two buttons here. Just a little add-on, you can also add the DZV or dynamic zone visibility to your two buttons, because maybe you don't want two buttons, right? So if I have the product shown, then I want my geographical button to be shown. So I'm going to choose my product DZV field here, and here I'm going to use my geo field. And now my buttons, they're also hiding and switching. So now if I click here, my two buttons, they also switch. Let me make this full screen so you can see it. My two buttons, they change as well. And yeah, that's basically how I implemented it. And yeah, again, I think it was really cool for you guys to see how troubleshooting happens, especially with dynamic zone visibility. So even though this was not planned, it was good for you guys to see. And with that, let me get back to my slides. There's really just one more slide. And that is just to thank you for your time and for listening tonight. And we do have a couple, 10, 15 more minutes. So please feel free to put any questions in the chat, and I can see if I can answer them.
We do have one question from Tom. The question is, how would you make a dashboard differently if you knew the audience was mostly end users with low data literacy with the idea of driving adoption?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I would do, and actually at my current client, that is what I'm doing, because I know that, well, why they might not have low literacy or data literacy, they are very high executives, like they are like fairly high in the hierarchies and they don't have a lot of time. They probably just look at it for 60 seconds. And so what I've been doing is I made instruction overlays. So you click a button and then there is an instruction overlay, so to speak, that lays over the dashboard, and it shows you the instructions without crowding the dashboard. But then on the dashboard itself, I am trying to put instructions where necessary and take everything out that's not necessary. So when I build dashboards for people with low literacy or high executives, just in some ways sometimes similar, the demands and requirements there, I'm trying to take away everything they don't need. So I don't try to predict every single scenario. I don't try to put 100 filters on there, because that's just going to be confusing. They need to sift through what they need. They don't have time for that. If you have people with low data literacy, they may not know what filter to apply, what that means for the data. So I'm just going to try and keep it very, very simple. And again, same for those high executives. I try to put everything that's not needed in like an info button, an instruction overlay, in an appendix. Like, for example, metric calculations, I put that in an appendix. If the more technical people, if they're interested in how my hit rates or whatever type of ratios are calculated, they can go look there. But the people with the low data literacy, they may not be interested in exactly how things are calculated and all of that. Yeah, any other questions?
That was a great presentation, Lisa. So thank you so much for sharing. We do have one more from Amy. She's asking, how do you tackle discovering purpose with stakeholders seeking data but don't have a specific reason? They just want to see the trends or gain insights. We often get asked quarterly reports with little to no on guidance on what is needed.
Yeah, very, very common in my field of work as a consultant, as data analysts. Yeah, no worries at all. We still have time. We have plenty of time. So feel free, guys, to put questions in the chat. Yeah, very common. I would say there is a bit of a mismatch between what people think they need and what you think they need. So they may say, I want to see trends over time. But if you were to ask them, hey, like, what do you do with that data? How does your day-to-day business look like? What decisions are you making? I'm just interested in, how you are driving this business. What decisions are you making? Then they may tell you, oh, I'm allocating funding, or I am the person who presents this data to the next higher up person, and I need my quarterly reports so that I can create presentations. And then those presentations, they go to the higher ups, and then the higher ups, they allocate funding towards this. So my first instinct in these types of things, when they're just saying, hey, I just need revenue quarterly report over time or whatever it is to be like, okay, do you have 5 minutes for me to ask a couple questions? And then if it's even just 5 minutes and I ask 3 questions, I can ask exactly things like that. It's like, hey, like, what's the next step you usually do after you use this dashboard? If they have a big table, like sometimes they come with a really big Excel sheet and a really big table, and they say, oh, I just want this in Tableau. Can you just make this table in Tableau? I try to ask things like, what's the first column you look at? Which is the first row you're looking at? Do you compare columns? Like, do you look at column A versus column F? And sometimes they're saying, oh yeah, I usually look at column A and then I go to column S. And I'm like, you're going all across that Excel sheet. Like, why not put them together? And so then when I'm building the dashboard, I'm trying to pay attention to that and kind of try and like make it easier for them. But I think coming back to the question about the purpose, it's really just being curious about their jobs, seeing if you can make their jobs easier, seeing if you can just grab 5 minutes, 10 minutes with them, just ask some questions, and kind of trying to get away from asking, what column do you need? What data do you need? What graph do you want to see? Because most of those stakeholders, they don't know a lot about graphs. They don't know a lot about data visualization, and they may not know what they don't know. So you are the person who knows more than them, and it's kind of on you to figure that out. Like, you hear what their business is, what their decisions are, and then you're like, okay, I think a diverging bar chart would work really well, and then you kind of try and implement that. Yeah, so one of the questions I was mentioning was, what are the decisions you're seeking to make from this? Any others? Let's see, what else do I usually ask? I guess it depends on the conversation, but I usually ask something like, are you presenting this data to someone, or are you taking some type of action from this? I am asking if this affects anyone else in the team or in the department. I would ask something like, let me see, I'm just trying to think back to some scenarios that I recently had. Yeah, just being curious, just asking like, hey, how does your day-to-day look like? Because usually when they tell you about your day-to-day, they will tell you, like, let's say they ask you to build a quarterly report, you ask them about the day-to-day or week-to-week, and then they're telling you, oh yeah, every week I am presenting to these and these people, and this makes me really nervous, and I just want to have a report that I can trust and that's easy to use, and I can just print it to Excel and put it in my PowerPoint and present it to them. And then by getting to know them this way, you can kind of like gauge, okay, maybe a super highly interactive dashboard is not for them, because if they need to present it in a PowerPoint, then it makes them nervous because they don't know how to put that in a PowerPoint, right? And they're not confident enough to present an interactive dashboard to their boss. So I don't know. It's really I don't know if this helps a lot, but it's really just asking a lot of questions, being curious, trying to get to know them, and then trying to read between the lines, and then transferring that into your dashboard and into your designs. Yeah, you're very welcome. I'd be curious in the last 5 minutes what everyone else is doing, or like what types of jobs you guys have. Like, are you more analysts? Are you more on the sales side? Are you more the end users of the dashboards? Like, where, and maybe where on that spectrum do you think you are? Are you the early adopters? Are you the late adopters? Like, if you want to put that in the chat, I'd be really curious. Okay, analyst, building dashboards. Late adopter, okay, good. Mid adopter, yeah, just like the majority, early majority, late majority. Yeah, it's an art to design dashboards that address both early and late adopters. Not an analyst, but building dashboards. Okay, so most people are probably building dashboards, probably more on the earlier or like early adoption side. Great. All right. Well, if there are no other questions,